Welcome back. All right, so I want to talk about the LA Kings. We're in between the first and second period between the Winnipeg Jets and the Arizona Coyotes as I record this. Now, I decided with the games that were done early today, I thought, well, I could talk about the Flames or I could talk about the Kings. Both Pacific Division teams. But with Calgary, it feels like there's not as much to discuss, and it feels like it might be more reactionary after a loss to Chicago. So I wanted to talk about the LA Kings. The LA Kings are currently 20, 10, and 6 overall. The overall standings, they're good, but it's been eroding. And now they're 0-3 and 2 in their last 5 games. This is the start of a huge road trip. So I wanted to look at the road trip and where they're at and where they might be. So they had won 4 out of 5 before the 0-3 and 2 run, but during the 0-3 and 2 run, let's look at who their leading scorers have been. Kempe has been number one, 4 goals, 2 assists during those 5 games. Kopitar, a goal and 4 assists. Fiala has 3 goals during the run. The team's been on Byfield with 3 assists. And I don't think any of those 4 players would be targeted by fans as players who haven't necessarily been good enough over the last 5 games. Laferriere, 2 assists. Laferriere's not there to produce points. He's there for the physicality. He's there for just his all-around 200-foot play. But then you get into Dubois with just the 2 assists. We will circle back to Dubois. Doughty, just the 2 assists, but Doughty's a defenseman, so you don't get too upset if Doughty has 2 assists in 5 games. You got Trevor Moore with 1 goal, so he had really good fortune early in the season. It was off to a really good start. But with Moore that's probably not going to continue. He may very well still be a 20, 25, maybe even 30 goal scorer by the end of the season, but he's going to have his downbeats during the year. Dano, just the 1 assist, and Kaliev kind of stands out. He has a lot of talent, no points in those 4 games. So currently they're 5 points ahead of the Oilers. They have the same number of games played, so they don't have games in hand there. They're 5 points behind the Vegas Golden Knights, who are also going through struggles over the last few weeks. They have 4 games in hand on Vegas, so they've played 4 less games than Vegas. They're 7 points behind Vancouver. They have 3 games in hand, meaning they are no longer a team with a better points percentage than Vancouver. They're 8th in points percentage currently amongst the National Hockey League's teams. And so it really has become a situation where, and I talked about this, you can have all those games in hand, but you got to win them. And right now they're finding ways to lose games. So they are 2-3-1 on the road since that 11-game winning streak ended. So that's just 2 wins in the 6 games on the road. And at home, it's not been fun for LA. They are 7-7-5 at home. So 7 wins in 19 home games, not a great run for the LA Kings. They need to turn that home record around. I mean, I talked about them, evening up their play between home and road. I kind of meant more along the lines of taking whatever they were doing on the road, bringing it home, rather than the other way around. But now they're finding ways to lose on the road. And their road trip, which started today in Washington, it's not easy. On Tuesday, they're at Tampa. Now, Tampa's 5-5 in their last 10. Tampa Bay is outside of a playoff spot. So we know that the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to bring their A game. Florida will host the LA Kings on Thursday. Florida's 8-2 in their last 10. They've won 7 in a row. They're not going to have any mercy on LA. That's not a thing. So Florida's going to be tough. And then they go into Detroit. So Detroit won in a shootout against LA this past week. And on this coming Saturday, LA will have their chance for some measure of revenge. Detroit's 4-6 in their last 10 games. Detroit needs to string some wins together to get above the playoff line and get their fans' faith back. Then on the Monday, LA Kings are in Carolina. Carolina, of course, 6-1-3 in their last 10 games. And then on the Tuesday, so on back-to-back nights, they go from Carolina to Dallas. And Dallas is 5-3-2 in their last 10. By the time they host the Kings, they'll have Ottinger back. And once they've got Ottinger back and you can start rotating your goalies properly again, Dallas's numbers should get better. So this is going to be an interesting road trip, because if at the end of this road trip, if the Kings haven't won, say, 3 of them, three of the remaining 5, I think we'll have something to talk about again, because the Oilers are charging. They are 15-3 in their last 18 games, and the Kings are not. So the Kings have left that door open. So while Vegas, we can have the discussion about Vegas and the position they've put themselves in, they are still pretty far ahead of the Oilers. Same with the Canucks, but the Kings do not have that going for them. And if you're a wild card, things can get kind of crazy from there. Of course, if you look back far enough, in 2012, they were number 8 seed, and they played Vancouver, who were the number 1 seed in the West, and it went LA's way. So it doesn't necessarily mean a lot. But I want to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois, or PL Dubois as he's going by now in LA. In 36 games, this includes today's game, 7 goals, 9 assists, 16 points. Has he been good enough? No. Pierre-Luc Dubois is in the midst of a brand new contract that will pay him an 8.5 well, it's an $8.5 million cap hit until 2031. Pierre Dubois, when he came to LA, signs the long-term extension, and it was pretty clear he wanted to prove that he wasn't going to be, a player that every year is looking at being traded. He wasn't happy in Columbus, then he didn't want to stay in Winnipeg. There was discussion about whether or not he might end up in Montreal. Habs fans, I think, are probably pretty happy with the fact that their team didn't sell the farm to bring him in because the results just haven't been there in LA. Now, I wanted to look at month by month because it'll tell you, is it getting better? So in October, he had 3 goals and 3 assists for 6 points in 9 games. In November, 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points in 11 games. December, it fell off, actually. 2 goals and an assist for 3 points in 13 games in December. And this month, 2 assists in January in 3 games. The thing is, when the Kings are winning, that's fine. So I didn't talk a lot about Dubois when the Kings were winning because they're winning. So if he's not producing and they're winning, great. Because when they start having some struggles, maybe Dubois' production gets better. Dubois helps him break out of a slump. All of this, it has not happened. And it doesn't look like it's getting any closer. And his numbers are better at home than on the road. But they're still not great at home or on the road. 19 games at home, 3 goals, 8 assists. And away from home, 17 games, 4 goals, and an assist for 5 points. So it doesn't really matter where he's playing. And when you look at, and I know, plus minuses, yada, yada, yada. But if you look at that stat, the only person with a really nasty plus minus right now is Dubois. Coming out of today's game, he's a -7. He was a -5 going into today's game. Fiala is the only other regular in the roster with a minus rating. Fiala has a -2. So for Pierre-Luc Dubois, or PL Dubois, you're not getting the offense, and it's clear the defensive numbers haven't been where you want them to be either. This is a player that was brought in with a lot of pomp and circumstance. There was a lot of excitement amongst Kings fans when they picked him up, but there were those as well that said, Dubois, it's not going to work. They didn't know what the Kings were doing, didn't know what Rob Blake was thinking either. I'm not saying that I'm agreeing with that, but they paid a stiff price. So in the trade to the Winnipeg Jets, where Dubois ends up a King, Gabe Vilardi, and this does not include today's game because it's still going on, Vilardi in 20 games has 8 goals, 8 assists, 16 points. Has the same number of points as Dubois and has played 16 less games. So even if it was just Vilardi for Dubois, we could have a debate about, is this a good trade for Winnipeg, good trade for LA? But then you've got Iafallo, 38 games, 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points. 1 more point than Dubois and 2 extra games played. Again, not including today's game. But Iafallo isn't paid anywhere near what Dubois is. The expectations are not high. And Iafallo's been solid defensively for the Winnipeg Jets, a team that just doesn't allow goals anymore. And then you've got Kupari. Only played 15 games, has the 1 assist, had some good moments, has been injured. He'll be back soon. That's 3 players. And then you have to add in the second-round draft pick this coming spring. So in June, there's a second-round draft pick the Jets got in exchange for Dubois. I was going to say Vilardi. As long as they still have that pick, of course, come June, unless they've already traded it. But yeah, draft picks, really, the price for draft picks tends to be pretty high. I think Winnipeg did pretty well in this trade. So what it does is it adds a lot of pressure. For Dubois, there's pressure because of the long-term extension, right? And I would expect that to potentially harm his production. But it hasn't been getting that much better. I know the 2 assists in January in 3 games is an improvement over where he was, but it's still no goals. He has 4 goals since the end of October. And this is an LA team now that needs that. So one of the reasons why I wanted to look at who's not scoring or is scoring during this skid is that this is where if they had a few extra goals from Dubois, there wouldn't be a skid, right? Especially that third column being a 2. That means there's games that were tied going into extra time. If Dubois pots a goal here and there, those are probably regulation wins for LA. So I guess the question I have is, if you're a Kings fan, do you look at this and say, it's just a downbeat, they'll be fine? Or is there a real reason for concern here? I don't qualify this as like where I talk about, terrible streaks and great streaks. This is one of those more just sort of I noticed that the Kings have started to really slide recently. And And I feel like if they don't turn this around, this is a road trip that could really beat them up. None of the next 5 teams that they're going to play are going to roll over. And none of the next 5 teams that they're playing are teams that don't have anything to play for right now. So this is going to be a very telling road trip for a team that got most of its points early in the season on the road, and now they need to become those road warriors again. So, do you believe in the LA Kings? Do you think they peaked too soon? I know I'm going to put that in the title. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.